Jai Yanran had been preparing for Starry Cup recently as well and had spent long hours practicing every day. She did not expect to see Han Sen here again. She saw Han Sen and said nothing. Since he did not show up, it meant he had admitted he was not good enough and she did not want to rub it in. Han Sen sat across her and said, "Last time I was delayed by something else. Without your number, I was not able to inform you, and I am so sorry about it. Why do men always have so many excuses?" Jai Yanran said. Han Sen opened his mouth and felt it was hard to explain. He had failed to show up indeed, so no explanation seemed good enough. "Shall we have a match tomorrow?" Han Sen thought for a moment and decided he could only prove himself with his ability. "Forget it, I do not want to be played again." Jai Yanran had clearly identified Han Sen as a cheater and did not intend to indulge him. When Han Sen wanted to explain, a few students came to them. One of them saw Han Sen and asked Jai Yanran, "Yanran, who is he?" "A freshman, I don't know his name." Jai Yanran did not tell Lai Yufeng about Han Sen, afraid that Lai might look for trouble. Lai Yufeng nodded and asked Han Sen, "Which department are you in?" "Archery," replied Han Sen casually. A thin man sat next to Han Sen, threw one arm around Han's shoulder and said while squinting, "Brother, if you want to get yourself a girl, you need to be smarter. Now this is our president. How dare you? Anyone could chase after a pretty girl. Why can't I?" Han Sen seemed very naive. The thin man grinned, put a spitball on the table, and took a cup to cover the spitball. Taking 2 extra cups, he put them upside down and began to move the 3 cups around so swiftly that it was bedazzling. After a while, the thin man smiled and said to Han Sen, "If you can tell under which cup the spitball is, you can go out with anyone you choose. If not, get lost and do not show your face in front of our president again." Jai Yanran did not stop the thin man, because she was interested to know Han Sen's reply. The thin man had a speed that was among the top 3 in the Hand of God Society. It was not that easy to tell. Han Sen looked at the thin man, and put his hand on a cup with a smile. The thin man was overjoyed. But Han Sen smiled and said, "There's nothing under this cup." Then Han Sen lifted the cup and there was nothing underneath. Han Sen put his hand on the next cup, stroked it and said, "Not under this one either." The cup was again lifted by Han Sen, and there was nothing on the table. Han Sen placed a finger on the last cup and said with a smile, "No need to tell you about this one." The thin man and the rest were embarrassed and even Jai Yanran regarded Han Sen curiously, not expecting him to be so good. "You are lucky today. Do not let me see you again," snapped the thin man. "You think this is finished?" Han Sen looked at the thin man, smiling. He was not someone who would not fight back after being bullied. "What do you want?" The thin man stared at Han Sen. Without a word, Han Sen put the 3 cups upside down in front of him and covered the spitball with 1 cup like the thin man, then quickly moved the 3 cups around. Jai Yanran, Lai Yufeng and the thin man all knew what Han was trying to do, but felt he was trying to teach fish how to swim. His speed was much lower than that of the thin man, so the latter even snorted. Han Sen acted as if he had not heard it and continued to exchange the cups. Then he sat up and looked at the group of people. "As you said, if you could guess right, I don't care what you do. If not, then F#K off and stay away from Jai Yanran." The thin man sneered, reached out and was about to lift one of the cups. "You just don't understand your limit, do you?" Han Sen blocked the thin man's hand, and the latter stared at Han angrily. "What are you doing? Boy, I will now show you who the real master is. It's under this cup." The thin man lifted the cup in the middle up, full of self-confidence. But after the cup was lifted, all were stunned, and the thin man looked dreadful. There was nothing under that cup. "Impossible, this is impossible." The thin man widened his eyes and looked into the cup he was holding. There was nothing. Jai Yanran was also puzzled, as she thought that the spitball should be under the middle cup. Jai Yanran looked at Han Sen in surprise and did not know how he could have done that. Han Sen had intended to practice operating warframes before Starry Cup began. However, Lin Beifeng told him excitedly that he had discovered a nest full of mutant creatures, which Lin could not take care of alone and asked Han Sen to hunt with him. Lin Beifeng did not dare to go alone and was reluctant to cooperate with any of the gangs. If he did that, he might not even be able to get 30%. After all, he only provided a location, and in accordance with the rules, if he did not contribute anything else, all he could have was 30%. "How long does it take?" Han Sen hesitated. "The Starry Cup will begin in a few days." He had promised Fatty that he would go. It was also his idea to apply for all the items, so it would not make sense if he missed it. Han Sen was very interested as he only had 52 mutant geno points and wished to gain more. When Lin Beifeng arrived at a crevice of the mountain, Han Sen was shocked. A crevice was cracked into the mountain for either an earthquake or other reasons. Many giant blue ants the size of mice were going in and out of the crevice. From afar, they could only see an ocean of blue lights, so there should be at least 100 or 200 of them. Sen, these are the creatures. Their bodies are very hard, and there are too many of them. When I just found them, I tried to wield my mutant beast soul knife at one of them and was only able to leave a white mark on its shell. Lin paused and then said, although they are small in size, they are very fast. In shorter distances, their speed was about the same as our mutant beast soul mounts. They couldn't keep that speed up though. After running for 100 feet, they will become slow, and each of them can lift a stone of 300 pounds easily. When Lin Beifeng was explaining, Han Sen examined the giant ants that looked like they were made of blue crystal, and found that they were biting at the rocks and making the crevice wider and wider. The rocks were like chocolate in their mouth, and it was hard to tell the rocks were hard just by watching. There are so many of them that the two of us would die there if we went inside, Han Sen said quietly. Han Sen looked around to find a suitable location, and summoned his horn bow and mutant black stinger arrow. He then tied a high-tech load-bearing thread on the nock of his arrow. Although the thread was as thin as a hair, it could withstand the weight of 100 pounds. A big ant would be easy. Sen, is it too far from here? These creatures' shells are very hard and even mutant beast soul weapons could hardly hurt them. Lin Beifeng said and saw the arrow had left the string. Whiz, half a mile away. The arrow flew as fast as electricity and went deep into the gap of a giant ant's shell. That blue ant was killed almost instantly, which amazed Lin. Mutant phantom ant killed. No beast soul gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 mutant geno points randomly. With the voice in Han Sen's mind, he saw the phantom ants nearby were all alarmed and looking around for traces of their enemy. But after they covered the ground nearby, they found nothing and went back to the crevice and started to consume the rocks. Soon he made another shot and killed another ant. Lin Beifeng admired Han Sen very much. From such a distance, Lin could not even tell what the ants looked like, and yet Han Sen could hit the small gaps in their shells each time. It was almost magical. When Han Sen was hunting the ants, Lin Beifeng was treating their bodies. The ants looked big, but the edible part was only a piece of jelly-like meat the size of an egg. Lin Beifeng ate several and enjoyed the fun of mutant geno point growth. But like any other creature, only the first few of the same kind worked. Lin Beifeng had stopped after eating 5 ants. According to people's general experience, 5 was the limit. If one continued to eat the same type of meat after the 5th creature, it might take a dozen creatures for one to gain another geno point. Han Sen's mutant geno points also rose from 52 points to 64 points. He had a relatively high number of mutant geno points, so in the future, even when he ate new meat, the effect would not be as good. Han Sen summoned the golden rock worm king. The small worm almost devoured a phantom ant instantaneously, and even the shell of the ant was crunched down by the worm. The worm king was not even as big as the ant, so Han Sen had no idea how it ate the ant up. Having consumed a dozen phantom ants, the worm king's body swelled up and became as big as a fist. Han Sen told Lin not to treat the meat anymore and threw the ants' bodies directly at the worm king, which was still able to continue eating. After eating 3 dozen ants, the Worm King grew as big as the phantom ant, and had no other change. A sacred blood pet is indeed impressive. It at least has an Olympic-size appetite. But Han Sen was not about to give it all the meat, as he needed to save some for Meowth. In front of Lin Beifeng, Han Sen could not summon Meowth. It was a beast soul pet that King Xuan gave $, so if you were to summon it, the secret might get out. Han Sen suddenly heard a different voice when he killed another phantom ant. Mutant phantom ant killed. Beast soul of mutant phantom ant gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 mutant geno points randomly. Sen, would you use this beast soul? If not, I can double, no, triple the price of an ordinary mutant beast soul armor to buy it, asked Lin, obsessed with the look of this suit of armor. I don't need money now, but I would trade it for an S-class license. My brother, I really do not have any S-class license. The military control is strict. A class is fine, but S-class is really hard to get, Lin said bitterly. Isn't this beast soul hard to get? Han Sen grinned and asked. Of course. Lin Beifeng frowned and thought for a moment, then said to Han Sen, I don't have S-class licenses, but do have one thing that you might like. When we are back, I will show you, and if you are interested, we could trade. A super biological warframe, Lin replied. I know about biological warframes, but why super? Han Sen asked. Lin Beifeng said, the ones we usually see are semi-biological, semi-mechanical. although their appearance is almost like a creature, and they can complete many difficult actions like human bodies. After all, there are many limitations to them. Super Biological Warframe is the product of the latest technology in the Warframe industry, and it has not been sold in the Alliance yet. Now, only a few military labs have several prototypes. Because the military needs the rare metal our company produce, we have established a connection with the military, and this Super Biological Warframe was a prototype I managed to get from them. It is super cool. What is the difference? An ordinary warframe must be at least 12 to 18 feet tall, not to mention the heavy warframes. Hence you could not bring them with you. A super biological warframe is different. It has adopted a particle restructure technology. I don't know for sure, but it can fit in a suitcase, and once it's open, countless small particles of intelligence will wrap your body up to form a super biological warframe. Mine is a prototype and does not have a weapon system. It is a little more than 12 feet tall and very powerful, much better than the King series of Starry Group. Lin Beifeng said passionately. It can fit into a suitcase. Han Sen gestured the size and was very tempted. You can have a look later. I am sure you will like it, said Lin. Okay, we will see, said Han Sen. Lin Beifeng was filled with joy. He could always have another warframe, but had never seen a beast soul like this ever since he entered God's sanctuary. Han Sen felt something wrong when he was thinking about his pets. With a glance, he saw a phantom ant the size of a pony climbing out of the crevice. But the crevice was a bit narrow, and its body was stuck there. Using its sharp claws to break the rocks and gnawing at the rocks as if they were tofu, the ant was about to be able to come out. Han Sen suddenly understood why the mutant phantom ants had been eating the rocks. It was not because they enjoyed the taste, but because they were trying to widen the crevice to allow this giant ant to pass. #T. It can't be a sacred blood phantom ant, can it? Lin Beifeng also saw it and exclaimed with his eyes wide. Han Sen drew the string of the horn bow to the fullest and aimed his black stinger arrow at the giant phantom ant. He paused for a second before shooting the arrow. Clank! The black stinger arrow hit the ant in the head and fell, leaving nothing on its shell. #T. So hard. It's absolutely a sacred blood creature, shouted Lin Beifeng. In the blink of an eye, the giant phantom ant had come out of the crevice and rushed toward Han Sen and Lin Beifeng faster than a cheetah. Han Sen took back the black stinger arrow, drew the string one more time and shot the arrow at the giant phantom ant. Clank! The arrow once again ended up hitting its head and did nothing, while the ant had rushed forward more than 600 feet in that moment. You go first. Han Sen once again summoned the black stinger arrow and shot it at the ant. Let's go together. The gap on its shell is so narrow that no arrow could fit in there. Lin cried. I know what I'm doing. Go. When Han Sen once again pulled the string, the formidable merely half a mile from them, Lin Beifeng saw that Han Sen did not want to leave and had to go first. Lin knew his limit. He could not even withstand one blow from this giant ant, and would become a burden of Han Sen's if he stayed. Lin was constantly looking back as he ran, worried about Han Sen's safety. Han Sen soon shot 2 more arrows, which were equally useless, while the giant phantom ant was only less than 600 feet from him. Lin Beifeng's heart was in his throat. Han Sen was as stable as a rock. Suddenly, he had a suit of fiery red armor on his body, and a ruby crown on his head. Even his hair turned blonde. His scarlet eyes staring at the giant phantom ant, Han Sen paused. Almost instantaneously, that giant phantom ant was less than 9 feet from him. Throwing itself at Han Sen, the giant phantom ant waved its saw-like claws at his body. Lin Beifeng's heart raced. He saw Han Sen suddenly took a step, which was incredibly fast. Han moved forward instead of backward and stayed very close to the giant phantom ant. He finally shot the arrow. Snap! The distance between them was so short and Han Sen's arrow directly went into the giant phantom ant's mouth. The entire arrow disappeared there and the giant phantom ant made a painful hissing sound. Han Sen took another step away from the giant phantom ant that was going on a rampage. The giant phantom ant went after him at an incredible speed, making it impossible for Han Sen to pull away from it. When it was about to get him, Han Sen again stepped aside and perfectly dodged its deadly blow. Lin Beifeng felt Han Sen's movements were odd after he looked for a while. Although Han was not as fast as the giant phantom ant, he could always avoid its fatal blows. The steps he made in those critical moments were incredibly fast. Obviously, it was not luck, but a certain footwork Han Sen was practicing. Snap! Another arrow disappeared in its mouth, making the giant phantom ant roll around on the ground in pain. Lin Beifeng, who was watching from afar, was dumbfounded. It was the first time he had seen an archer like him. Han Sen was shooting the arrow from all kinds of weird angles without so much as a pause, and all his arrows hit the target. The giant phantom ant slowed down after taking 6 hits. Han Sen knew the toxins from his arrow were working. Sacred blood phantom ant killed. Beast soul of sacred blood phantom ant gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 sacred geno points randomly. Lin stared at Han Sen and said, I don't want anything else. But if you want to sell that sacred blood phantom ant armor, you must come to me first. Lin Beifeng had considered this thoroughly. Han Sen would enter Second God's Sanctuary soon, and by that time, he still had the opportunity to get the sacred blood phantom ant armor. Okay, this I promise you. If I want to sell it, I will ask you first, agreed Han Sen readily. It's a deal. Lin reached out his hand and wanted to pinky swear. This is too childish, right? Han Sen was embarrassed. I do not care. Lin entwined his little finger with Han's, while murmuring, whoever breaks the promise will have 10 wives and no penis. That is devious. Han Sen quickly got rid of Lin's finger. That's what it takes. Lin laughed. Then the two cleaned up the rest of the mutant phantom ants, which were about 500 in total. Most of them ended up in the Worm King's belly, which was probably bottomless. To comfort Lin Beifeng, Han Sen gave him the mutant phantom ant armor first. So as soon as Lin was back in steel armor shelter, he immediately brought the warframe he was talking about to Han Sen. Sure enough, it was just a silver alloy box the size of a suitcase. Although heavy, it was still hard for one to imagine that it contained a warframe more than 12 feet tall. In God's Sanctuary, there was no way to test this warframe, but Han Sen believed that Lin Beifeng would not deceive him for a mutant beast soul. Hence, he left God's Sanctuary with the case. It was night when Han Sen teleported back to school. He paused and went to the 7th warehouse with the super biological warframe. The warehouse was empty. Han Sen opened the case the way Lin Beifeng taught him. A light beam was projected from the case and scanned Han Sen's body. Scan completed. Analysis completed. Super biological warframe silver killer unlocked. The moment the case was opened, liquid like mercury mixed with colorful particles flowed out of the case. The entire case then became part of the liquid and flowed toward Han Sen. Soon, he was covered in that liquid. That feeling was hard to describe. It was like the Iron Man putting his armor on, but a bit different in that all the parts were constructed by the particles. Soon a silver humanoid warframe more than 12 feet tall appeared where Han Sen was standing, and Han Sen was sitting in a tight cockpit. Han Sen could only praise the great power of science and technology. A small case of less than 100 pounds could become such a huge warframe, and its weight was also matching the tonnage of a regular warframe. Unfortunately, human science and technology are completely useless in God's Sanctuary, or else human would have dominated God's Sanctuary already, and all the creatures would have been wiped out. Han Sen sighed. In fact, the reason why Han Sen had this idea was that he was still in first God's Sanctuary. If he evolved and went to the higher phases, he would change his mind. Han Sen tried to drive the silver killer, which was indeed powerful as Lin Beifeng said. Such a small warframe was actually more powerful than a heavy one like Builder, and of course much more flexible. As long as the operational level was there, Silver Killer could perform all the movements a person could. Like Lin Beifeng had said, except for the lack of weapon system, Silver Killer was perfect. Of course, the more difficult the operation, the greater the burden on one's body. Most people would have a hard time controlling their own bodies on a roller coaster. So, to operate a warframe at a high speed was not something anyone could do. After all, it was only a prototype from the military laboratory, so it was impossible to equip it with a weapon system, or else they would not give it to Lin. Han Sen was content. Although there was no weapons system, Han Sen could install some individual weapons himself, such as laser sword, laser gun, and particle gun. In short, Han Sen was more than satisfied with Silver Killer. If it was not for Lin Beifeng, he could never have a warframe like this for a mutant beast soul. Perhaps it was arranged by fate. QXing Station had designated Fang Mingquan to host the live broadcast of Starry Cup in Blackhawk Division. Contest Center was, after all, only a temporary show and went off the air soon after the contest. It will resume until the contest next year. Since Fang Mingquan had no shows to host at this point, he chose to host the live broadcast of Starry Cup in Blackhawk Division when asked to choose his next show. Fang Mingquan and Han Sen seemed to have been brought together by fate once again. But Fang Mingquan did not know that Dollar was a student at Blackhawk. Liu, what were the traditionally strong items of Blackhawk? Blackhawk's strongest item is men's singles and martial arts. In last year's Starry Cup, they got the 3rd place in the final of the entire alliance. The student who won is still studying here. His name is Aoyang Ziosan, and he has also signed up this year. Any other strong item? Fang Mingwen asked. Not much. Their Warframe Society and Hand of God Society had good performance, which was not that outstanding across the alliance. They were both top 20 to top 10. Liu looked at the data and said with a smile, but it is interesting that with a terrible record in archery, Blackhawk had recruited lots of students specialized in archery this year. I believe they will do much better than in previous years. Archery? Fang Mingwen slightly frowned. Archery was, after all, an unpopular game. The popular ones in the alliance were mainly related to aircraft, warframe or combat. Archery was quite peripheral, because most people were even more willing to see a game of firearm. Anchor, the only highlight in Blackhawk will be martial arts. We should cover Aoyang Ziosen's games and throw in some Warframe and Hand of God matches in between, suggested Liu. Still 2 days until the games start. We can decide after learning more about Blackhawk. Fang Mingwen looked at the time. It's late. Let's call it a day. We have been working all night. Some snacks now would be a good idea. Fang Mingwen and Liu left the room assigned to them by the school and went to a cafeteria. It was midnight. The cafeteria was almost empty and food was still being sold at the smart machines. Fang Mingwen looked inside the hall, and only one student was sitting in the corner, eating. Fang then took the food they just bought and sat opposite the student. Fellow, you are eating so late. Sitting opposite the student, Fang Mingwen said with a smile. Fang believed that the student would recognize himself, because judging from his age, the student must be in First God's Sanctuary and should have watched Contest Center, of which Fang was the host. Fang Mingwen was a little disappointed that Han Sen did not recognize him, but soon let it go. He asked casually while eating, "What is your name? And which department are you from?" Han Sen, Archery Department, Han Sen answered simply. Archery Department. Fang Mingwen and Liu were surprised that they had met a specially enrolled student the first day they had arrived. Fang Mingwen looked Han Sen up and down. So you are from the Department of Archery. Have you applied for Starry Cup? Which items in archery did you sign up for? None in archery. Han Sen smiled. What did you sign up for then? Liu could not help but asked. Warframe, Han Sen said. So you are in the Warframe Society? Liu asked. No, I'm in the Heavy Warframe Society. Han Sen laughed. Sen, you must be great at that then. Which items did you sign up for? I have enrolled in all the items, with one exception due to a time conflict. Han Sen thought about it and said. Liu was even more convinced that Han Sen was a dawdler. Although there were many Warframe items, the differences between them were huge. Most people would focus on 1 to 2 items to strive for the best results possible. So, what kind of performance can we expect from you? Fang Mingwen asked with a smile. I will try to get championship in all the items I have signed up for, Han Sen casually replied. Liu almost choked on his drink when hearing his reply. After coughing for a while, Liu cast an odd gaze at Han. Fellow, I think you should sign up for more items then, such as Hand of God. The more championships the better, right? Hand of God is boring. Han Sen did not care about the irony in Liu's words. Why? Fang Mingwen was quite curious. Because all the opponents are too weak, said Han Sen casually. Liu regarded Han Sen, unable to believe what he had heard. Liu felt that students nowadays were so arrogant that they would say anything just to impress others. Liu had checked Blackhawk's record in Hand of God, which was quite impressive. And Lai Yufeng, among others, was in the top 50 in the alliance. However, he had never heard of Han Sen. From the data he had collected, Han Sen was not even in the Hand of God Society. Liu looked at Han Sen and ridiculed. So, you must be much stronger than Lai Yufeng at Hand of God. Not much, but I could beat him by 20 points, Han Sen said. Liu thought this student was not making any sense at all and gave up talking to him. Fang Mingwen, on the other hand, was intrigued by Han Sen. He said with a smile, it's great that young people have confidence. When is your game? We will go cheer for you. I have not got the schedule yet, but I will be at almost all the Warframe matches. You could come at any time. Han Sen left the cafeteria and walked toward his dormitory. By chance, he saw Jai Yanren, who was also walking back to her dormitory. Hey, Han Sen walked up quickly to greet her, since she was his girlfriend, technically. Jai Yanren saw Han Sen and glanced at him sharply. Then she suddenly had an idea and put on a smile. You always wanted to prove that you did not cheat. So, you must have signed up for Hand of God in Starry Cup. Han Sen sighed. I was going to register for Hand of God, but the members of my society have all signed up for Warframe items, so it seems that there is no chance for me to prove myself. Save it. Jai Yanren despised Han Sen, believing that he simply did not dare to participate in Hand of God games. You are my girlfriend, so do you want to come and see my games? Han Sen smiled and asked her. Enough with the nonsense, Jai Yanren said. Which Warframe items did you sign up for? All of them, with one exception because of a time conflict. Why? You think this is like casting a net, the wider the better? Jai Yanran was slightly curious. For the prizes, there are nearly 10 items under the Warframe category, which was the biggest of all. I could get several first places and easily earn 10 million. Han Sen told the truth. He entered purely to get the rewards. Several first places. I don't think you could even make top 10, let alone top 3. Jai Yanran questioned him. You are underestimating me again, Han Sen said helplessly. That's fine. Since you think I cannot get any prize, then shall we make a bet? Proposed Han Sen. You want to cheat again? Jai Yanran felt a bit uncertain when it came to Han Sen, since she still had not figured out how he had beaten the Thin Man and Lai Yufeng in the cup game. Lai Yufeng was equally clueless when he thought about it afterwards. Missy, this is a school-wide game. What can I possibly do? Han Sen really did not know why she had this stubborn impression of him being a cheater. For heaven's sake, he had never cheated in front of Jai Yanran. Jai Yanran suggested, okay, I'm down. You just said you will take several first places in Warframe items. I do not want to embarrass you, so if you can get 5 first places in those items, consider yourself winning the bet. What do I get if I win? Han Sen grinned and asked. If you can be the champion in 5 items, then you will be able to prove yourself, and I will keep my promise to be your girlfriend, Jai Yanran said with a smile, not believing he could get a single championship. Not fair. Han Sen shook his head again and again. How so? Jai Yanran was a bit annoyed. You are already my girlfriend, so the stake means nothing to me. You will have to kiss me if you lose, on the mouth, not cheeks. Han Sen then added, it also must be completed within 1 day after the end of the game. The penalty for any delay is 1 kiss per extra day. Jai Yanran was about to lose her temper before she suddenly smiled. Alright, but if you are not champion in 5 items, then I will have to punish you as well. Do you disagree? Any punishment you like. I will win anyway, said Han Sen confidently. Do not be so arrogant yet. We have to sign a contract, in case you deny it afterwards. Jai Yanran did not have pen or paper, so she said, come with me. We will print the contract out and both sign. Jai Yanran led Han Sen to a self-service terminal and printed out 2 copies of the contract. She showed them to Han Sen. Check if you agree with everything stated here. If you do, then sign it please. Han Sen picked up the contract and carefully read it. It was a legally binding document and he was afraid she might set him up. Fortunately, Jai Yanran did not think she would lose at all, so the contract was fair. If he lost, he just had to teach her how to do his trick in the cup game and make sure she can do it as well. Also, he would need to promise that he would never show up and talk to her without her permission. After reading the contract, Han Sen hesitated because he was not sure if he could teach Sleeveblade to others, as it was from Gambler's family, and he could not leak it without his approval. Jai Yanran saw Han Sen's hesitation and thought he got cold feet. She pouted and said, you are scared now. Where did your arrogance go? That will be all for now. I hope you find this story interesting. Leave a like, subscribe, and enable notifications so you won't miss the next part of this story. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.